My name is Elijah Mercer. I am 34 years old, and 11 days ago my father stood in front of 80 people wearing a gray tailored suit and announced that legacy mattered more than blood. The crazy part? Nobody in that ballroom realized he was talking about me. Not when he raised his champagne glass, not when he smiled for the cameras, not even when he handed my younger stepbrother the gold watch that belonged to my grandfather. But I knew, because 3 hours before that gala started, I sat inside a downtown law office signing paperwork that could force my father to sell the company he spent 30 years building. And unlike him, I actually read the contract. Right now, somewhere in Chicago, my father is probably still telling people I betrayed him. Maybe he believes that. Maybe it helps him sleep. But if you stay with me until the end of this story, you will understand something most people never learn until it is too late. Families do not fall apart in one moment. They crack slowly, quietly, one ignored phone call at a time, one missing chair at the dinner table, one holiday photo where somebody keeps getting pushed closer and closer to the edge. And eventually, the person holding the whole thing together gets tired. My father's name is Raymond Mercer. Everybody calls him Ray, owner and CEO of Mercer Development Group, luxury apartment buildings, commercial properties, high-end renovation projects, the kind of company that puts its logo on downtown skyscrapers and sponsors charity golf tournaments. People in our city loved my father. He shook hands hard, remembered birthdays, tipped valets too much, talked like every conversation was a locker room pep talk. He built himself from nothing. That part was true. My grandfather, Frank Mercer, worked maintenance at a steel factory outside Joliet. My father grew up sharing a bedroom with 2 brothers and wearing jeans with holes sewn shut from the inside. By 22, he was hauling lumber. By 28, he had his own crew. By 40, he owned half the West Side construction contracts in Cook County. People called him self-made. But my grandmother used to laugh whenever she heard that. Nobody's self-made. Somebody always carried the bricks. For my father, that somebody was my mother. Her name was Caroline. She met my father at a diner off Route 53 where she worked night shifts serving coffee to exhausted contractors. She was smart, funny, beautiful in the kind of way that didn't need makeup or attention. My father used to say she could calm a room just by walking into it. When I was little, I believed they were the kind of couple people wrote songs about. Then my mother died when I was 10. Brain aneurysm. No warning, no long goodbye. 1 second she was helping me study spelling words at the kitchen table. The next second she collapsed holding a red pen. People say grief changes a house. They are right. After my mother died, our home stopped sounding alive. No music in the mornings, no cinnamon pancakes on Saturdays, no humming from the laundry room. My father buried himself in work, and I buried myself in trying to not need anything. At 12, I learned how to microwave frozen dinners. At 13, I learned how to wash my own clothes. At 14, I learned that being easy was the fastest way to stop adults from looking exhausted when they saw you. Then came Vanessa Hale. My father met her at a charity fundraiser downtown when I was 16. She wore emerald green. My father stared at her like somebody discovering fire. Vanessa had a son named Tyler. He was 13. Blonde hair, perfect smile, travel baseball kid. The kind of teenager adults describe as full of personality, even when he's being rude. Vanessa knew how to perform warmth. That's the best way I can explain it. She touched shoulders when she talked, remembered names, laughed with her whole body, made people feel selected. My father fell hard, and honestly, at first, I wanted him to be happy. I really did. The problem was, Vanessa treated love like limited seating, and once she sat down at our table, she started quietly removing chairs. Not dramatically, not in ways anybody could point at. Small things, tiny things, the kind of things that sound ridiculous when you say them out loud. "Elijah, honey, Tyler's school is farther away. Would you mind switching cars with him for a while?" "Elijah, Tyler gets nervous sleeping alone during storms. Can he use the upstairs room?" "Elijah, we already bought 4 tickets. We thought you had plans." We thought, we assumed, we forgot. Funny how all those accidents always happened to the same person. My room became Tyler's gaming room 6 months after the wedding. My basketball trophies disappeared into storage. Tyler's framed baseball jerseys went onto the walls. One afternoon, I came home from school and found Vanessa repainting the hallway. Family photos covered the floor. I picked up one from a vacation in Michigan. Me, my mother, and my father on a dock. Vanessa glanced at it and smiled politely. "Oh, that one's older. We're updating the house a little." Updating. Like my mother was outdated furniture. By senior year, every picture in the house looked like a brochure for a different family. Ray, Vanessa, and Tyler. And somewhere near the edge, me. Always slightly out of frame. I wanted to study architecture. Not business, not real estate. Architecture. I loved structures, angles, weight distribution, the idea that something beautiful could also hold people safely. When I got accepted at Northwestern, I thought my father would finally see me, really see me. Instead, he stared at the tuition packet and sighed. "That's expensive, son." Vanessa sat beside him, stirring tea. Tyler's private school already costs a fortune. Maybe community college first. Community college. I had a 3.9 GPA, state awards, portfolio scholarships. Sometimes it sits beside you in a tuxedo while strangers clap for your replacement. I stood up calmly. Nobody noticed. I walked out of the ballroom, past the marble lobby, past the valet stand, into the cold Chicago night. My phone buzzed. A text from Leonard. "Paperwork finalized. Call if you wish to proceed." I stood under the hotel awning while rain started falling in thin silver lines. Inside the ballroom, the music swelled, people celebrating, laughing, toasting legacy. I thought about my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather highlighting contracts because people change. Then I thought about my father saying Tyler became the son he needed. I dialed Leonard. "File it Monday morning," I said. And for the first time in 20 years, I stopped begging for a seat at somebody else's table. 9 days later, my father called me at 7:12 in the morning. I was making coffee, still half asleep. His name lit up my phone screen. That alone told me the envelope had arrived. My father never called before noon unless something was on fire. I answered. "Elijah?" His voice sounded strange, thin, like somebody trying to speak while standing on unstable ground. What the hell is this? No hello, no good morning, straight to panic. I leaned against the kitchen counter. "You received the notice?" "You filed separation paperwork against the company?" "Yes." Silence. Then, "Are you out of your damn mind?" I took a sip of coffee, still hot. "No." "Elijah, this letter says Mercer Development owes you $1.6 million. That's what 25% is worth." "That company isn't liquid cash," he snapped. "You can't just pull money out of thin air." I stared out the window. Rainwater slid down the glass. You should have thought about that before deciding I wasn't family enough to matter. His breathing changed, heavy, angry. Are you punishing me because Tyler works at the company? No, I said quietly. I'm responding to 20 years of being erased. That's ridiculous. Is it? Silence. I heard Vanessa in the background, demanding answers. What's happening? What did he do? My father lowered his voice. Come to the house tonight. No. Elijah, this is legal now. Leonard will handle communication. You would really do this to your own father? That sentence almost made me laugh, because parents always ask that question after years of never asking, what did we do to our child? I said, I learned business from watching you. Then I hung up. 3 minutes later, Vanessa called. I declined. She called again. Declined. Then came the text. How dare you embarrass this family over jealousy? Jealousy. That word shows up whenever neglected people finally stop accepting crumbs. I blocked her number. By noon, 3 relatives had contacted me. Cousin Rachel, your dad is freaking out. Uncle Brian, call your father. Aunt Denise, families work things out privately. Funny. Nobody said that when I spent years trying privately. That Saturday, my father demanded a formal meeting. Location? The Mercer house, of course. The same house where my mother's photos disappeared. The same house where Tyler's graduation banner once covered the fireplace. The same house where I slowly became a guest. Leonard insisted on attending. So did my father's attorney. His name was Victor Shaw. Expensive suit, perfect haircut, smile sharp enough to cut glass. When I arrived, Tyler opened the front door. He looked furious. You're unbelievable, he muttered. I walked past him. The dining room looked exactly the same. Same chandelier, same long oak table, except now everybody sat like opposing teams before kickoff. My father at one end, me at the other. Victor Shaw opened a folder immediately. Mr. Mercer, he said professionally, my client would like clarification regarding your intent. My intent is outlined clearly in the filing. Vanessa slammed her hand onto the table. This is greed. Leonard calmly adjusted his glasses. No, he said, this is contract enforcement. Tyler scoffed. You've never even cared about the company. I looked at him. That's not true. I stopped fighting for access after being told repeatedly I didn't belong there. Oh, please, Tyler snapped. You were always distant. Distant? Another funny word. People ignore you long enough, then blame you for standing far away. My father rubbed his forehead. Elijah, what do you actually want? The crazy thing? I almost answered honestly. I almost said, I wanted you to love me louder. But grown men in legal meetings don't say things like that. So instead, I said, I want what the agreement guarantees. Victor slid papers across the table. We'd like to challenge valuation. Leonard nodded. You're entitled to independent review. For 3 straight weeks, accountants crawled through Mercer Development's finances. Buildings, loans, assets, equipment, land value. The final number came back even higher, $1.84 million. My father looked physically sick, because suddenly this wasn't emotional anymore. It was arithmetic, and arithmetic does not care who cries. That same week, something else happened. A former project manager contacted me privately. His name was Daniel Ruiz. He'd worked for Mercer Development 12 years before resigning. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Daniel stirred his espresso nervously. Your dad always talked about you. I blinked. What? He kept saying you were brilliant, said you got your mother's brain. I stared at him. That doesn't sound like him. Daniel sighed. He changed after Vanessa. There it was again. Not one dramatic moment. Gradual erosion. Daniel looked uncomfortable. For what it's worth, people inside the company noticed how different things became. Different how? Tyler failed upward. Everybody else had to earn things. I laughed once, dry. Sounds accurate. Daniel leaned forward. Your grandfather hated it. That sentence stayed with me for days. Your grandfather hated it. Maybe that's why he wrote the clause, not to destroy the company, to stop somebody from being pushed out quietly. The pressure inside the Mercer house started leaking publicly. Vendors heard rumors, employees whispered, banks asked questions. One investor withdrew from a condo project. Tyler blamed me immediately. He cornered me outside the courthouse after one mediation session. You're wrecking everything. No, I said. I'm exposing how fragile it already was. He stepped closer. You always thought you were better than us. That one surprised me, because neglected people don't usually feel superior. We feel unwanted. Those are different things. I never thought I was better. I just got tired of pretending I mattered less. He had no response to that. 2 months into negotiations, the bank approved emergency restructuring. Mercer Development would survive, barely. But survival came with consequences. Luxury spending froze, 2 expansion projects halted, executive salaries cut, including Tyler's. Vanessa hated me with nuclear intensity by then. She sent me a 5-page email at 2 a.m. You destroyed your father. You poisoned this family. You couldn't see Tyler succeed. Not one sentence asked why I finally snapped. Because people who benefit from silence rarely investigate it. The final settlement meeting happened in early November. Cold rain, gray skies, Chicago looking exhausted. My father entered the conference room looking older than I remembered. Not physically older, emotionally older, like stress had finally introduced itself properly. He sat across from me quietly, no speeches, no anger, just tired. After the lawyers finished reviewing documents, he asked for 5 minutes alone with me. Everybody stepped out. The room became very quiet. My father stared at the table. Do you really hate me that much? I looked at him carefully, and suddenly I realized something heartbreaking. He genuinely did not understand, not fully, because people who slowly abandon someone rarely experience the abandonment all at once. Only the abandoned person feels every inch of distance growing. I don't hate you. Then why? I took a breath. Do you remember my college graduation? He frowned slightly. Of course. You left before the reception. Well, Vanessa had reservations. You missed the only award I received. Silence. His face shifted. Tiny crack. I didn't know there was an award. I know. His face shifted. Tiny crack. I continued. Do you remember when you promised to visit my apartment after I got promoted? He rubbed his temple. Something came up. You canceled 3 times. Elijah. You know what the problem is? I asked quietly. You think abandonment only counts if somebody leaves loudly. He stared at me. But people can abandon you slowly, too, one forgotten thing at a time. For the first time in my entire life, my father looked ashamed. Not defensive, not angry, ashamed. And honestly, that hurt worse. Because if he had just been cruel, this would have been simpler. But he wasn't cruel. He was weak. Weak people let louder personalities rewrite families. Weak people avoid uncomfortable conversations until silence becomes betrayal. My father swallowed hard. I thought there was time, he said. That sentence almost broke me, Because that's what everybody thinks. They think there's time. Time to call later. Time to apologize later. Time to notice someone later. Until suddenly later costs $1.84 million, or worse. My father looked up at me. "I loved you," he said. Loved, past tense. I stood up. "That's the problem," I said. "You acted like love was something you felt, instead of something you did." Then I walked out.
Tyler barely passed algebra, but somehow there was always money for his baseball showcases in Florida, new bats, travel tournaments, custom uniforms. I worked 2 jobs through college: coffee shop mornings, campus library nights. I graduated with honors and $41,000 in student debt. My father mailed me a watch. No card, no note. Just a watch with the Mercer Development logo engraved on the back, like I worked for him instead of belonging to him. The years after college blurred together. I moved into a tiny apartment, designed boutique hotels, worked 70-hour weeks, built a reputation. I kept trying with my father. Birthdays, Father's Day texts, invitations to lunch. Most conversations ended with, "Sorry, kid, crazy busy." Or worse, "Vanessa already made plans." Tyler, meanwhile, drifted into the company somebody inheriting a kingdom. No degree, no experience, no discipline. But he had confidence, and my father loved confidence. At 24, Tyler got a vice president title. At 26, he crashed the company truck drunk outside Naperville. The incident disappeared. At 28, he lost nearly $200,000 approving a contractor without reviewing permits. My father called it a learning experience. Meanwhile, I once suggested a redesign during a family barbecue, and my father laughed in front of everybody. "Architects love wasting money," he said. "Real builders know what matters." Everybody chuckled. I smiled too, because sometimes humiliation is easier when you help carry it. Then my grandmother died. Evelyn Mercer. She was the last person in that family who still called me every Sunday. The funeral was held on a rainy October morning. Afterward, the attorney asked me to stay behind. His name was Leonard Price. White hair, navy suspenders, voice like gravel. He closed the church office door and handed me a sealed envelope. "Your grandfather wanted you to have this privately." Inside was a handwritten letter. "Elijah, your grandfather trusted contracts because people change. Never apologize for protecting yourself when others refuse to protect you. Love, Grandma Evelyn." Attached to the letter was something else, a copy of the Mercer Development Group operating agreement, highlighted, flagged, annotated. Specifically, one clause. Clause 11.6. Any partner holding minority equity may trigger mandatory liquidation review upon voluntary separation from active ownership. I looked at Leonard. "What is this?" He folded his hands. "Your grandfather transferred 25% ownership into a protected trust before he died." I stared at him. "What?" "Your father controls the company operationally, but legally, once you turned 32, those shares vested fully." The room went silent. Outside, thunder rolled over the church parking lot. "Does my father know?" "He knows the trust exists," said Leonard carefully. "He does not know the clause attached to separation rights." I sat down slowly. 25%. A quarter of Mercer Development Group. Leonard slid another paper across the table. Estimated company valuation, $6.4 million. My share, $1.6 million. I laughed, not because it was funny, because my brain literally did not know what else to do. You're telling me I own part of the company? You already did. I drove home in silence. That night, I opened a bottle of cheap whiskey and reread every page of the agreement until 2 a.m. My grandfather had protected me, quietly, years earlier, because somewhere deep down, he knew exactly who my father would become. For a while, I did nothing. I didn't want money. I didn't want revenge. I wanted acknowledgement. That's the part people misunderstand. Most neglected children are not asking for castles. They are asking to stop feeling invisible. So I tried. Again. I emailed my father requesting quarterly ownership meetings. No reply. I mailed certified documents asking for financial transparency. No reply. I called, texted, suggested lunch, suggested mediation, suggested literally anything. Nothing. Eventually, Vanessa called me herself. "Elijah," she sighed dramatically, "why are you making things adversarial? I own 25% of the company. You've never even worked there. That doesn't change the contract." Silence. Then, "Tyler is preparing to take over someday. Your father doesn't need stress right now." Take over. There it was. Not someday, already decided. I hung up and stared at my kitchen wall for a long time. The next month, my father announced the Mercer Legacy Gala. Black tie, downtown hotel ballroom, 200 guests, investors, contractors, local politicians. Real purpose? Handing Tyler the future. Everybody knew it. I received my invitation 3 weeks late. The envelope had somebody else's name crossed out beneath mine. That should tell you everything. 2 days before the gala, my cousin Rachel called me. "Elijah," she said carefully, "I think you should prepare yourself." For what? They're announcing Tyler as successor. I leaned back in my chair. Okay. "No," she said quietly, "you don't understand. Vanessa has been telling people your father finally has the son he always wanted running the company." The room inside me went cold. Not angry, not explosive. Cold, like concrete in winter. That afternoon, I called Leonard. "If I exercise Clause 11.6, what happens?" A pause. "Mercer Development would be legally obligated to buy out your shares at market value. And if they can't? Court-supervised restructuring. How fast? 90 days. I looked out my apartment window. Cars moved through downtown traffic below. People crossing streets. Normal life. I said, "Prepare the paperwork." Leonard exhaled slowly. "You're certain?" "No," I admitted, "but prepare it anyway." The gala was held Saturday night inside the Blackstone Grand Hotel. Crystal chandeliers, live jazz, champagne towers. Everybody looked expensive. Vanessa wore silver. Tyler wore a tuxedo like he'd been born in one. My father looked proud, radiant. When I walked into the ballroom, 3 people glanced surprised that I had actually shown up. That hurt more than I expected, because surprise means absence became normal. I found my seat, table 14, near the back, beside 2 subcontractors I'd never met. My father's table sat near the stage. Vanessa, Tyler, investors, city officials. Not me. A waiter poured champagne. At 8:47, my father stepped onto the stage. Spotlight, applause. He smiled the way powerful men smile when they think history is agreeing with them. 30 years ago, he began, I was carrying lumber in the rain praying somebody would give me a chance. The audience laughed softly. He told stories, funny ones, inspiring ones, stories about hard work and sacrifice and building something meaningful. Then his tone changed. Legacy matters, because someday you realize success isn't about buildings, it's about who carries your name forward. Vanessa looked emotional, Tyler grinned, and suddenly I knew, not guessed, knew. My father reached underneath the podium and lifted a velvet box. Inside sat my grandfather's gold watch, the one Frank Mercer wore every single day for 40 years. My father cleared his throat. There's only one person I trust to continue what I built. The ballroom erupted before he even said Tyler's name. People already knew. Tyler walked onto the stage smiling like a quarterback after a winning touchdown. My father hugged him, hard, proud, public. Cameras flashed. Then my father said the sentence that changed everything. You became the son I always needed. Needed. Not wanted. Needed. Like I had been a failed draft. The room applauded. And for 1 second, I honestly couldn't breathe. Because people talk about heartbreak like it explodes. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes heartbreak is perfectly.
Winter came early that year. Chicago covered itself in gray slush and freezing wind. By December, the settlement was finalized. $1.84 million paid across structured installments. Mercer Development survived, technically, but survival and recovery are different things. The company downsized. 3 executives resigned. Banks tightened oversight. And for the first time in 30 years, my father stopped looking invincible. People in business circles whispered. Some blamed me, some blamed Tyler, most blamed family complications, which is rich person language for emotional disasters wearing expensive clothes. Meanwhile, my own life became strangely quiet. No dramatic victory, no cinematic happiness, just silence. The kind that comes after years of emotional static finally stops buzzing. I paid off every dollar of student debt, bought a small brownstone townhouse north of the city, started my own architecture firm. I named it Caroline Studio, after my mother. That part mattered to me more than the money ever did. One snowy afternoon in January, I received a package, no return address. Inside was my grandfather's gold watch, the same one my father handed Tyler on stage. No note, just the watch. I sat at my kitchen table staring at it for nearly an hour. Finally, I called Rachel. Did my dad send this? A pause. Yeah. Why? Apparently, Tyler and my father had a huge fight. Apparently, Tyler wanted more authority at the company. My father pushed back. Voices escalated. Old resentments surfaced. Then Tyler said something brutal. You only picked me because I was easier. That one landed, because deep down, everybody knew it was true. Tyler was easier. Easier than grieving a dead wife, easier than reconnecting with a hurting son, easier than confronting guilt. People often mistake convenience for love. My father called 2 weeks later. This time, I answered. His voice sounded tired, older, human. I got your message, I said. Did you keep the watch? Yes. Silence. Then, your grandfather wanted you to have it eventually. Eventually. Funny word. Eventually is where people store accountability they don't want to face today. We talked for 23 minutes, longest conversation we'd had in years. No yelling, no legal threats, just awkward honesty. He admitted Vanessa controlled more than he realized,
admitted he avoided conflict, admitted he kept assuming I would understand. That word again, understand. Neglected children are always expected to understand everybody else's limitations, rarely their own pain. Finally, he asked, "Do you think we can fix this?" I looked around my townhouse, snow falling outside, blueprints spread across my dining table. Peace, actual peace. And I answered honestly, I don't know. Because forgiveness is not a light switch. It's construction, slow, careful, expensive. A month later, Aunt Rachel invited both of us to Sunday dinner, neutral territory. I almost declined. Then I remembered something my grandmother used to say. You can love people and still require proof they've changed. So I went. My father arrived carrying a pie from an Italian bakery we used to visit when I was little. He looked nervous, actually nervous. That mattered. During dinner, he listened more than he spoke, asked questions about my projects, remembered details, small things, tiny things. How funny healing starts with the exact same size moments that caused damage. After dessert, we stood on Rachel's back porch watching snow collect on the railing. My father shoved his hands into his coat pockets. I drive past your old apartment sometimes, he admitted. Why? I think part of me kept expecting you'd still be waiting there. That sentence hurt in a completely different way. Because there it was, the truth underneath everything. He thought I would stay available forever. Some parents confuse unconditional love with permanent access. But eventually, neglected children grow up, move out, stop begging, learn contracts. I looked at him, really looked at him, not the businessman, not the father who failed me, just a flawed man standing in snow, realizing consequences do not disappear because regret arrives late. Dad, I said quietly, I needed you when I was 17, not after lawyers got involved. His eyes watered instantly. I know. And maybe that was the first truly honest thing he'd said in years. Vanessa and Tyler eventually moved to Arizona. I heard about it through relatives. Mercer Development downsized again. My father retired early. Sometimes he calls. Sometimes I answer. We are not healed, not fully, but we are no longer pretending nothing happened. That's a start. Last spring, he visited my office for the first time. Caroline's studio occupies the top floor of a restored brick building downtown. Exposed beams, tall windows, natural light everywhere. He walked slowly through the space, looking at models and blueprints. Finally, he stopped in front of the company sign, Caroline's Studio. He touched the letters lightly. She would have loved this, he said. I nodded. Yeah, she would have. Then he looked around again and said something I never expected to hear. You built something beautiful without me. Not defensive, not jealous, just true. And weirdly, that mattered more than the money ever did. Because at the end of all this, here's what I learned. People think inheritance is about cash, stocks, property. Sometimes inheritance is emotional. Sometimes parents pass down silence, conflict avoidance, emotional cowardice. And sometimes the bravest thing a child can do is refuse to inherit those things. My grandfather left me a contract, but the real gift wasn't the money. The real gift was proof. Proof that somebody saw what was happening. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that my seat at the table existed even when everybody else acted like it didn't. So, if you're listening to this story while sitting at a table where you feel invisible, hear me carefully. Love is not measured by what people say in speeches. It's measured by who keeps making room for you when nobody's watching. And if they never make room, build your own table. Make it strong. Make it honest. Make it somewhere peace can finally sit down. That's my story. And maybe, it's yours too.